in Town Council regularly scheduled committee meeting for tonight. We also have a one-item special meeting that we'll address prior to the committee meeting. And Anne Marie, if you would please brief us on the action needed for the coastal management grant.
Yes, Mayor, the council has been working really hard on this project. This is a grant that application that we wrote and was funded recently, and it will provide $100,000 of funding from the state to help replace the failing, deteriorating bulkhead that is around Edenton Bay near the bay side of the Barker House, and the bulkhead will go from there to the breakwater, and then it will come inside the harbor and replace the bulkheading in the harbor along the side of the harbor where the Liberty parks, and then it will come across the front and head towards where the dock starts. So the grant agreement is before the council to approve tonight, and we ask that you authorize, I think the mayor has to sign the grant agreement, and then we'll work, Bud, our purchasing agent, will help us solicit bids, and we'll get the project rolling.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. With that bit of background and what you have in your packet, I'll entertain a motion to...
I so move that we address that issue in the form of a motion.
Second.
All right. Very good. Questions, comments?
Just a comment. I am so glad we are finally doing this. We put money in the budget for several years to do this, and we just couldn't do it. So now we've got $100,000. I think our part's $34,000.
34.8.
Right, and we had previously set $100,000 aside for years. So, I'm so glad we're getting this done. This is really nice.
It is.
Because I'm telling you, I'm scared to death every time I'm down there, which is a lot, but I'm scared to death because there's so many holes in it, watching it sink and go away. So,
Yep.
kudos.
All right, very good. Further comments, questions? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. All right, we'll sign that and get it out of here. Moving now to our committee meetings. Tonight, we'll begin with our administrative committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Biggs. Please, sir.
Man, we've actually got 5 items on the agenda tonight, but we're going to try to get through this as quick as possible for everyone that is here. The first item on our agenda is the sailing, kayaking, paddleboard report. And I think Anne Marie had some things that she wanted to talk to us about. She and I talked earlier today about this. So I'll let you start off if you don't mind.
Okay. Wanted to recognize the committee members that are here tonight. Brian Fitzsimons is here, Brian Donnelly, and Shannon Ray is here. And I think they were at your last meeting when Shannon presented the report. And what are after you've had time to look at it and think about it, if you have any questions that you wanted to ask committee members, they're here. But sort of as next steps, if you would want to consider directing me to reach out to the state agency that is responsible for monitoring the federal grant that was used the town received back in 1979, to make sure that the proposed facilities to be built on the lawn of the old ice plant or the Conger building would be permissible, would fall under the terms and conditions of the grant. We've had a very preliminary informal conversation last spring about that, and the indication was that was certainly something that they thought would be compatible, but we need to go ahead and have something more formal discussions with them.
As I emailed to you, I'd like to see something in writing from them, just saying that there will be no problems if, in fact, this council decides that's the way we want to go, that there will not be any problems with us having a building on site. I know there are some grants that were out there years ago that would not allow you to build any permanent structures on the property that have federal grants, for recreation purposes or whatever.
I just got
So-
one, I mean, I don't know whether, you know, it might be a chicken versus an egg. They might say, well, we want to see exactly what you're going to build, you know, before, I mean, that, you know, so they want to see plans. I mean, that's the only I can see it might be a problem is that, you know, who's going to go first, kind of. I mean, you know,
Yeah, I would hope that they would give us some indication that, yes, this is a use that we would consider, and then go
Right.
ahead and start working on a schematic. And Councilman Biggs and I talked today about, and I know the council has talked about Part T funding, the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund, and that we would work to apply for funding to help pay for the construction of the storage facility and the classroom, and what other improvements that were proposed that don't fall under the federal grants jurisdiction. Adding on to the park attendant's office here, that property does not fall within the 1979 grant.
Right.
Yeah.
But we would hope that that construction could be packaged and put in a grant application with Parteef.
May I say something here with this,
Yes, sir.
Chairman?
Yep, sir.
In anything that you have the conversation with the group that you're going to be talking to, I would hope that it could give us a broader definition of what can be done in the park in other areas. I'm going at this from a broader view for improvements, and certainly in support of what the Sailing Commission is, or group has come up with. But it may well be that when we begin getting into this, a better idea comes along, but we don't know if we can use it. In other words, not just concentrate on the north side of the building in front of between Water Street and the building. Is that possible?
Sure.
To be broader?
Can ask them if they can be
I
broader.
mean, somewhere else,
Sure.
what else can be? Because I don't think we really have a handle on that.
Well, Hood did that research for you, the town attorney, and then also we did receive some information from the state, who is the caretaker of the federal grant.
But I never really got and maybe it's my fault, and that's very, very possible and probably very probable, but I did not get a grasp of what could be done in other areas of the park.
Well, we'll ask them for a
broader
broader definition.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, along what Bob is suggesting, one of the things that has been talked about often in here, whenever we speak of this area, is parking. And if there's an opportunity to add parking up around this new shed, if that's allowable, then I would also like to have their opinion on that. Because parking is there right now, and you could quite easily add to what we have and still be off the footprint of the building, or so it appears on this diagram. But
Could we possibly say impervious, maybe
Yeah,
rock,
yeah.
not some kind of
Not pavement.
blacktop, no
you
blacktop?
know, or that
Yeah,
checkerboard,
yeah, something,
concrete
just something that
or
looks better
yeah.
than pavement.
Love to use it at the beach a lot.
Yeah.
I'd probably be willing to bet that's what they would tell you you would have to do.
Yeah, probably so. Okay.
Doesn't hurt to ask.
That's right, absolutely. Okay. Thank you for that, Ms. Simpson. We will wait until we get back the questions, answers to our questions, and then we'll bring it back to this committee and try to make a recommendation to the council. Number 2, on the preservation easements tonight, I think this committee is actually ready to ask you to wait until after our February the 22nd meeting to see what the wishes of the town is. There's, as to what we're going to do with that particular building. And, you know, if we're going to possibly still own the building and lease it, then do we need these covenants on it as of right now? But from the best that I can understand, and of course I'll open it up for, of course, I'm sorry, one of our committee members is not here tonight, had a major breakdown at work and had to stay. But I think that is going to be the recommendation from this committee, is to wait until after we have our public meeting on the preservation issue.
I have a question on that. Not relative to your recommendation, but my question is, when are we going to delve into what these proposed covenants are and how they will affect the development of this property? That's one question. And you brought up, Steve, in your comment about what we're going to ultimately do with it, if we're going to sell it or lease it or whatever. The two proposals we have, we've corresponded with relative to a lease. Neither one of them are interested. And one of the proposals doesn't even want to buy the building. So I'm in a quandary here. Is part of this conversation needs to be that we want to go forward considering both of these proposals when one of them is asking us to give the building away. And I don't know why we can't get into that question and hopefully come up with an answer, because it's pretty clear to me we've got a $282,000 valuation on the building, and I'd be shocked if this council would turn that $282,000 worth of real estate over to a developer and get nothing in return for the building other than what the enterprise might be that goes inside the walls. So it's created quite a bit of frustration for me, frankly, because it's clear, covenants aside, that one of the two proposals is the town just signs over the deed for ownership and the project goes forward. And I don't think that's what we intended, and I don't know why we can't address that and either say yes or no.
Well, I'm with you on that one, because I'm sort of like Mr. Stallings. I
gave my
just don't
opinion
see
on
how I
that.
can vote to give it away under any circumstances.
I don't think anybody's willing to give it away. I hadn't heard anybody sit up here and say they want to actually just give it away. I mean, since you've expressed that, I will tell you what I think I am here. And if I'm wrong, speak up. There are some members of this council that feel like that particular building, number one, at $282,000, I realize that was appraisal. If we had the opportunity to buy that building at $282,000, we'd probably buy it. Just opinions that I'm hearing. And since I'm the chairman of this committee, that's why I'm giving you what I'm hearing. That's number one. Number two is, we're in a rush. It seems like we're being led to be in a rush to put this building in one particular person's hands. Well, if we decide, or if we hear from the general public that we're wrong in selling the building, and I have heard that a heck of a lot more times than I have heard the other way, that we shouldn't be selling this building. And if that's the case, and we hear that, then we don't want to be selling the building. I mean, if we're going to listen to the people of the town. So we'll have to go out for other proposals. I mean, just because we went out for proposals and we got two, and we had so many conditions on the building that you had to do this or you had to do that, doesn't mean that there isn't someone else out there, if we're going to lease the building, wouldn't want it. I mean, I do this, I try to do this every day for a living. And sometimes you have to do a reverse turn. And, you know, if you don't have enough companies looking at you or looking at a particular building that you got, then sometimes you might have to bite the bullet and lease it. Or sometimes you find the right one and you do go ahead and sell it. But I am convinced that we don't need, if we're going to sit up here and decide what we're going to do with the building, we need to cancel a meeting on February the 22nd.
No, I'm not suggesting that the time, I want to hear from, I've been trying to get the public hearing up and out for a couple of 3 months, and we finally reached that point. But I'm just raising the question on the two proposals, and I wouldn't disagree to put it back out there for a whole new round.
I think that's exactly what we need to do. I really do.
Yeah.
But again, that's just my opinion, and I don't know that we need to wait until after February the 22nd and see what everybody else is saying.
Well, I don't mean to go back to the covenant thing. Number one, I'm really proud of Chowan County. You see how many covenants we had in this town?
Yeah.
I mean, all the hard work that Claudia has done with Preservation North Carolina, I mean, that's really amazing. I'm all for putting a covenant on it because it protects it from bad government in the future. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a protective covenant on something later, you know, because it means that a government can't go back and do something foolish. So that's my 2 cents. I'm ready for this I'm ready to have a public hearing and get this thing rolling.
Well, I'd like to, I mean, I'd really truly like for us to table everything, because I've had more people call me about this issue and say, I'm tired of hearing it. And they are tired of hearing it. Heck, I'm tired of hearing it. I know y'all are tired of hearing it. And I know we've got to do something. That's why we sit up here and that's why we were elected. We got to do something with it. But I think we ought to just put everything on hold until after we hear from the general public, and then come back and sit up here. If it takes all night, it takes all night. We'll take care of it.
Works for me.
Okay.
Public hearing has been needed, and we're going to have one, so that's a good thing.
That's a great thing.
And, but at some point in time, it's going to be our decision based upon what we hear,
That's right.
as to what to do with it. Right now, it's sitting over there collecting dust. We've not had an income stream come out of it ever since the Northeast Commission was disbanded, and it's an asset. And right now, it's an unused asset. And we have two proposals on the table that somehow we just can't say yes or no to. And I just wanted to express my deep frustration.
I can say yes or no if you want to do that in the next meeting. I mean, I could do that, but I don't think that's fair to the general public when we've laid it out that we're going to have the public hearing, and I certainly want to listen to what they've got to say.
No, me either. I mean, I'm longing to hear from the public. But after that's said and done with,
I agree.
the two offers are still there.
That's right.
So,
And after that's said and done, there might be more offers out there.
yeah.
Well, may I say something?
Sure.
It sounds to me like we're pushing to make a decision in default.
I don't understand.
Tell me what you mean.
We're saying that we wouldn't sell the building, we wouldn't give the building away. We're not sure if would be interested in a lease. We've gotten a no from both of the people that we've gone back to.
Right.
We have not negotiated, to my knowledge, with either of the people involved. We don't know for sure that the individual that was talking about the restaurant would not be willing to buy the building. We don't know that. He's come back with a proposal. The other fellow has come back with a proposal. Maybe he would lease the building if we negotiated with him, if you wanted to do that. So, I mean, sitting here and saying, well, we're not going to give the building away, we've only got one choice, that's default. There's no conversation with the people involved. There's no presentation or request for changes to what we went out there with. It seems to me we went out,
We did
with
present that to them, and they came back and said no.
they said no for lease.
I thought that's what we were talking about.
No, I'm saying, we haven't negotiated with them. We haven't talked to them about anything. We just left them blank. We've caught them up on the fact that we're going to do this or we're going to do that. But by cutting one out because you have an opinion about it, that's a default to the other. Just is. And if that's the decision of the council, then that's just fine. It will not get my vote because I don't think that's the way to do it.
The default would be back to us then to decide what we want to do with it.
And I would agree with that.
It's not a default to another party.
It is if we sit here and say,
Don't do it.
I'm not going to
Nobody's
sell it.
proposed that though, Bob. I haven't heard that yet. I mean,
I just heard it from you.
What?
You said, we're certainly not going to give it away.
No, or I concluded that, or we start all over again.
Or,
We start all over again. That's what
well, okay.
That's what I
If- but to
concluded.
start all over, I wouldn't
I
have
was
any
more or less-
objection to it.
I was-
I just don't want us to push ourselves into, I really think that there are more opportunities out there for it. I don't think the RFP went out with the data that necessarily needed to be in. And we haven't really had a discussion about the pros and cons of the two proposals, but I see the problems with that, and I see the problems too with us not doing that. I think, it's a bag of worms.
It is.
Well, yeah, and
It's an absolute bag
both of
of
them are
worms.
relying on tax credits, and you have to have a 39.5-year lease in order to have a tax credit. So
And
that's-
nobody's gonna do that.
nobody's going to do it nobody's going to do that
No.
building without a tax credit.
No, that's right. I mean, that's an opinion, but
That's
I
my
think
opinion.
that's right.
So,
Okay, I tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna table everything until after February the 22nd, if it's got to come before this committee. How about that? I got my other members sitting down there shaking their heads, so y'all bring your ink pens, be prepared to write on the 22nd, and then after that, Mr. Mayor, we'll be ready to rock and roll.
Pretty.
Guarantee it. How about that?
Love it. Love it.
Be ready to go.
All right.
Next on our agenda tonight is the solar farm text amendment. And as y'all remember at our last meeting, they brought in the text amendment and we looked at it and it was asked to come back to this committee. Two of the issues were the decommissioning and the height and width of the landscaping. So that we can get this back to council, I'll certainly open it up as to how you want to do this text amendment for our UDO and see where we go from there. I know there's been a lot of talk about the screening process. I know Bob had some stuff earlier, and so I'm gonna open it up to everyone, let y'all talk about what you want.
well, number one, when I said a 500-foot buffer, I meant like a forest around it. I mean, I want a forest. I mean, I don't want to see it. So when I said a 500-foot buffer doesn't do any good if it's just mowed. I think it needs to have mature trees, plant trees that are going to grow up so you don't see it. And if they have to back the thing up for height of trees or whatever and sun angles, back it up, But I think it needs to be around all sides because you don't know what's going to happen at any given time around it. So, that was my idea on the buffer, is it needs to be treed, not, Leland cypress are going to get eaten up by bugs in 5 years. I mean, it doesn't need to have a long line so you know something's back there. Just put a 500-foot treed buffer. They can plant some trees and then they plant pines and it can grow up and, you won't be able to see it. It'll just look like woods.
Extending how far out from the the project itself.
I don't care how far it sits from the project. I just, you just, as long as they have a 500-foot buffer that goes, it can go from right up against one of the solar panels if you want it to, I don't care. But as long as it goes 500 feet towards every other direction, then they can make the decision how far they back the farm up in that. That's fine with me.
So that would in effect prohibit it from going in a farm field.
No, I don't think so. You just put a 500-foot buffer around it and you can put it in a farm field.
That's 5 football fields.
Yeah, with mature trees.
Not mature, but I mean,
So
no, but yeah, but they will mature.
They will
You know,
mature,
yeah.
okay.
I mean,
all right.
just plant it.
Okay, I didn't hear the will
Yeah.
part.
Well,
Okay,
if you, pine trees are about the least buffer that you're gonna come up with. You're talking about
There's a
pine
pole
trees,
with
you're
stuff
gonna
on
have
top.
tree and then a little bit of pine.
Yeah,
at
but I
the
mean,
top.
it's gonna grow up in stuff. Just you don't
No.
cut it. You don't. Look at the land that Anna Ragland owned over there by the Dollar
I
General.
know
They
that,
cut
that's
that down,
underbrush.
and now you can't
That's
see anything.
underbrush, that's not true.
Well, I think that's fine. Just have it so it looks like a woods line, and you don't see anything in there. And we can come up with trees, but when you start putting Leland cypresses around things, they fall completely. Everything about it.
Well, I am not a horticulturist. I am not particularly concerned about what is put there to grow. I certainly do agree with the buffer zone, and it should not be considered unless there is an opaque buffer zone that you cannot see it through. But I want that buffer zone to be probably covering more space around that particular quote-unquote farm, which I detest the thought of calling it a farm. It is not a farm, it's a utility. And we should be referring to it as that. You give it too much credibility calling it a farm. It's not going to grow anything. But we need to have a definition, as you're saying, about a buffer zone and where it goes. And I've got a question. It's bugging me, and maybe it's not an appropriate question, but as I understand, the planning board recommended that this text amendment under certain conditions be approved. Right? Well, I think we need to go through that text amendment item by item and review it and make recommendations or not.
Would you not think
And
we need to
I'm wondering
send it back
how-
to them to do that?
Say it again?
Send it back to the planning board and let them let them,
No, I mean,
with our.
we're
with our
gonna have to
suggestions.
we're gonna vote on a conditional use permit which will do that text amendment. We need to know, and we should have a word in it. The way this thing is now, you could have a quote solar farm almost anywhere in this town.
Well, no,
Well, where you,
can I respond?
we meet the requirements of a similar, that you had to go through to come, you had to respond to the state regs on the UDO.
If you do not
I
adopt a
understand.
text amendment, then basically a
That's
conditional
freezing
use
up.
permit for a solar farm could be applied for in any zone. The text amendment is going to limit it severely. The recommendation was that it be only allowed in the IW zone or in the RA zone. So you'd be narrowing the areas where a solar
Well, they're the
utility.
kind of things we need to be sure that we are aware of or not.
That is in
It's
there.
in there.
Yeah, it's
That
in
is
there.
definitely in there.
Then I've got one more question. It's my opinion that the planning board made their decision in a quasi-judicial manner. Is that right? No?
They've had solar's been before them twice, in November, I believe it was, October.
Yes.
In October, it
Yeah.
came before them as a text amendment. And that was a policy issue, and that's what they voted and recommended, and that went to you in December.
So they did not have to meet the 4 criteria?
That application, the conditional use permit, came before them in January.
That's the one I'm talking about.
And they review, they do not act as a quasi judicial body. They review and ask questions and make recommendations to you. They look at the same criteria that you do, but they don't have to make findings the way that you do.
So,
there's actually two separate things here.
I got it.
You know, there's the text amendment that we're talking about now. And then, since we didn't pass that text amendment immediately, then the gentleman decided he'd come back to us with a conditional use permit, hoping that, you know, he could slide that in before we got the text amendment completed. And so, with the text amendment, I think the two big issues that I have heard has been the buffering and the decommissioning.
well, I don't disagree with that.
And of course, as you're saying now, where can we put them? So they're only going to go in
Those two
industrial warehouse and RA, industrial warehousing, excuse me.
Well, my question is, of the criteria that they made decisions based on, one of which is the value of neighboring properties. Does it reduce the value of the neighborhood, for example, or where it's going? And some of these zones that you're just referred to, there's very little, if any, residential, generally. In this particular case, though, there is residential. And I can't grasp exactly how anybody could make a decision on the value of the property relative to being positioned in view of or next to or behind a buffer zone of a solar panel farm. There's no way that that could legitimately be answered because there's no real reference for it. It's strictly by judgment or opinion. It's not on fact. So how do you know? And how can you make a judgment? And how could we if it comes here? I mean, it's not going to come here as a judicial matter.
It will come to us as a judicial matter when it comes to us.
So when it comes to us, there's no way that I could agree that it's not going to affect the value of the property. Because I have absolutely nothing to go on. I've researched realtor values, how they do make values, what it's about. And absolutely every one of them says continuity of the neighborhood is extremely important. This is not continuity of the neighborhood.
May I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
Evidence.
I don't have any.
Well, if someone comes in with a certified appraiser's opinion, that's evidence. What you think, what I think is not. And that's what will take place in the CUP hearing as a quasi-judicial hearing when it comes here. If there is no evidence to support whether it does or doesn't harm the value of the property, then it can't be heard.
Well,
Evidence.
that's where I fall.
Yeah.
The certified appraiser would really be putting his neck out to make an appraisal on that.
But that's not our judgment. Our judgment comes after that is presented or not presented. I mean, we can't be part of the process because, you know, then we can't sit in judgment until the application comes to us, and then if there's no evidence to support it, then it won't be heard.
I got to ask a question if I may, Steve.
Yes, sir.
This may get me run out of Chowan County. But can we make a change, or can we say that there can be none of those things put in the city of Edenton or in the ETJ? Can we do that? Can we say that?
I think Hood spoke to you at your last meeting, that recent Supreme Court ruling says you cannot do that.
You can't deny it.
You can, just because it's not in your use table, doesn't mean that the use is not allowed. So, that interpretation changed, that was, it used to be, if it wasn't in the use table, it wasn't allowed. But recent court decision has changed
That was a surprise.
local governments.
And that's really what bothers me, I suppose.
Yeah.
But we're certainly free to determine every time whether or not it devalues the neighbor's land. And I think you got a very good point.
And, us doing this landscaping screen of 500 foot, that might be something they say they just can't deal with. I mean, I don't know, but I'm just,
Well, and on the bond, I think the bond needs to have some yearly inflation adjustment, so that, if it costs $1 million now to decommission the thing, what's it gonna cost in 30 years? It needs to have be tied to some type of inflationary.
Acceleration.
Yeah, to be a bigger bond in 30 years.
well, and part of this too is it says,
Cost of living index.
it says, the $25,000 that they would have to set aside, or if, they can find someone who owns a scrapyard that says, oh no, it'll be worth more than $25,000. We don't know that. I mean, metal, you could take a pickup truckload of metal 2 years ago out here and, come away smiling. You can take one today and I'm not sure you're gonna get a whole lot of gas money to get back home on. I mean, that's just what's happened, and that might be what happens if and when these things have to be decommissioned.
I think we need a full, big old bond. I mean, I'm all for that. I mean, it's a big bond.
And I think that's protecting,
To protect dig the soil out afterwards and do all that if there any of the drip in it.
I would agree. I mean, I have fought for the bond issue and the whole time that it is, and I'm kind of like, they've got in here, if they want to write us a check and we put it in the bank and we hold on to it for 30 years or however long we have to, 25 years to hold on to it.
Governments don't do well with checks in the
No,
bank.
that covers it for forever and ever. I don't have, but I'm like you. I mean, I hate to think that a bond company would go out of business in the next 30 years, or 25, however long this thing is supposed, but it does. You're right. It does happen.
I'm not necessarily against solar farms, but I am against solar farms in a residential neighborhood.
I am too. Adjacent to, close to,
Yes.
proximity of, and also where it might expand. You're tangling up property for 20 years minimum.
And who knows really what the decommissioning cost is going to be? I mean, that's what we've got here, and that we're going to put in the text amendment. And it says, and I was looking for it, that's why I was scrolling up and down, it says the amount of the guarantee shall be 1.10 times the estimated decommissioning cost minus the salvageable value. Number one, we don't know what it'll cost 25 years from now. And number two, you don't know what the salvageable value will be. Or $25,000, whichever is great. Who knows?
You don't know how the salvageable value is, or how it's based. You don't know.
Well, it's expensive to clean up anything. I mean, look at a firing range. I mean, just anything.
Yeah.
And we're dealing with opinions.
Sure will. And as I stated the other night, the gentleman that brought this to us, once he gets this, and he's a nice guy. He can stand here and tell us anything he really wants to tell us, but once he gets these permits, he's gone. I mean, he's not gonna own this. It's gonna be a Duke Energy or Dominion Power or one of those companies that's gonna own it.
It's a mess.
It is. I mean, it really and truly is. And the state has helped us make this mess.
Well, they have no say over the size of the buffers and the size of the bond.
That's right.
And whether or not we feel like it reduces property
We do.
values.
We do.
Well, I know that, that's why we're talking about it. I mean,
So, decommissioning. I think we've got it on the landscape and the screen. I would ask Anne Marie if she could get with whomever you deal with trees and find out what'll grow 25 to 30 foot tall that's an evergreen that's not a Leland cypress, and, you know, would make
and
it.
some big trees in there too. I mean,
Yeah,
just,
oh, yeah.
I mean, wouldn't it be nice if you gotta have one of these things, you just look at it and you see a wood line.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Because I wasn't at the last meeting, I watched the tape, but, so, you're asking that the text amendment, instead of a 500-foot setback,
Right. A buffer.
you want a 500,
Foot
Buffer.
treed buffer.
so this is 1,000 feet. Didn't Heath tell us, Larry and Sarah, that your house is about 1,000 feet from the edge of the where the solar farm is supposed to go, was that right?
Sure, it said 1,000, 1,200, or 1,500.
Okay.
Those numbers are
So,
floating in my head.
so you're gonna say you want,
Yeah.
just say that's about 500 feet, but that would have to be
And they put it in the middle of it.
they would put what in?
Put the solar apparatus in the middle of a 500 feet. You draw a square.
So he would not be able to have a set on the property line there?
I want him to have it all the way around it, so you put it in the middle of you have 500 feet on all directions, and you have and you can put those trees you want to put right up against it temporarily till the forest grows out.
You're gonna have to.
Yeah, that's fine, I'm fine, you can put a few wax myrtles and whatever you want to put, but, you know, then we put a 500 feet all the way around it and put it in the middle and nobody will see it. And I don't think, I think it's a possibility.
Okay.
Because, I mean, anything could happen on the other side, too. I just don't see why the property line's got,
Well, you highlighted, packet material, has a blank in there, you can fill in the
Right.
number of feet you want. You can fill in the depth and the number of feet you want. The language, can we agree to the language with the right numbers?
yeah, I'm fine, but,
And Bob, when this comes before the council, whenever it does come before
Yeah.
the council, if there's some other things in here about the components and the compliances and, or anything else that you'd like to add to it prior to a zoning permit or whatever, feel free to bring it. I mean, that's why we're having to bring it before a committee and then, bring it to y'all so everyone can vote on it.
So the chronology now is,
I was just gonna ask for clarification. The next step, we'll have to advertise a formal text. Do you want me to advertise it for a public hearing? That would be in March, or do you want it back at your next committee meeting,
no,
the end of February?
Well, once we get this decommissioning thing put to bed, I think we can, I think we can go ahead and advertise it so we can do like the state is telling us to do. We can have the text amendment.
and I think it's
No, we
irrelevant what this particular developer
That's
thinks
right.
of our text amendment. We just do what text amendment we want,
That's
and then
right.
he comes before us and decides if he can fit within it.
yeah.
So, do you want to see the draft amendment before it's advertise for a
Sure.
public
Yes.
hearing?
Yes.
So that would put it back at a future committee meeting?
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Put it in February.
Okay.
Have we already scheduled the CUP?
The
Hearing?
CUP hearing will be held February 9th.
Well, how could we have a CUP without a text amendment? Hell,
As Hood explained to you before, he
I
had,
know, but it's, excuse me. Rationally, it makes, I'm having a very difficult time with it. Maybe everybody else is just smarter than me.
No,
no, it's,
It's crazy that we
Why,
got this,
how could we
but-
make a decision without the text amendment and everything that's supposed to be in it? It's qualifying what can be done.
I understand the frustration, I understand the confusion, but the lawyers have said, and the applicant's lawyer cited case law.
Well, maybe they were wrong.
And, no, but Hood reviewed it because, we had an application submitted and that applicant has the right
Yep.
to seek that permit, so.
Okay, are you telling me that at our next meeting, he's going to present a CUP? Okay, that we're going to vote on?
You'll-
Without the things that we've talked about tonight are not going to be part of it.
You could make those part of the conditions, you could,
How?
Well, you can make them part of his, I mean, we can
No,
say,
we
you got to
can't.
have it.
He's presenting a CUP based on what is in the rules right now.
Do you think we could ask him to postpone it until after we have this text amendment done?
Well, he's not going to want to do that. This is
He's
an
up against
opportunity.
the sunset.
I thought that was January 1.
I can ask him, I sort of think he's gonna wanna continue on
If
the
I was
line.
him, I'd definitely want to come forward.
But you all set the conditions, so on February 9th,
We can set
you can
these
say,
conditions.
you can add these conditions.
Yeah.
This,
What are we going to,
And these conditions will be part of his conditional use permit.
That's
It won't be anything to do with the text amendment, that'll come at a later date, but his,
okay, where is he going to get these?
We're gonna give them to him.
we're gonna give
I
him,
mean, when?
if we vote next month on his conditional use permit. I think the confusion part is, there's a text amendment and a conditional use permit.
Yeah.
But
I know.
if we vote on it for conditional use permit and say you gotta have 500-foot buffer the whole way around it, and you've got to have a, $1 million certified check for decommissioning,
I grasp all that, but it's,
We can't slow that process
traditionally,
down.
you would not have somebody come in for a CUP and you introduce to them the conditions at that time. We would have an agreement. Now, I mean, here we said, I'm assuming that we're all in agreement, but I don't know that we are. What are we going to do? Have a discussion about what should be the restrictions or what should be the kind of trees or the buffer zone? I mean, it's a mess.
it doesn't have to be a discussion. You can just say, I'd like to see, or Sambo can say, I'd like to see 500-foot buffer added on as a condition. I'd like to see $1 million check, and I'm just throwing that out, for decommission. Add it to it. Okay, let's vote. And again, that's when we vote on the 4 criteria.
We've added conditions above and beyond what have been recommended to us by the planning board on numerous occasions.
Yes.
Because conditions surface in this conversation that may or may not have surfaced over there, or we believe more strongly than our advisory board did that certain things needed to be part of the permit. So, and they can include, like Steve said, anything.
It's our conditions. So if there's other
Well,
conditions
look,
that
I
you
give
got,
up.
no, if there's other
quit.
conditions that you got, please bring them.
Whatever you want to do sounds great to me.
But I would like
Just
to
go
ask,
for it.
what is this board feel is a good decommissioning plan.
Well, see, you don't even have that.
Well, I mean.
We're gonna bring it up again.
We've got to bring that up. It's just
I
like
know.
Two separate issues.
It
That's
is.
what he's trying to say.
And it's just like the buffer zone, if we're gonna put a 500-foot buffer, do you want a $250,000 cashier's check delivered to Anne Marie's office to put in the bank for decommission?
It sounds great.
I think it'd take more than that.
I mean, I don't know.
You probably know more about this than.
I honestly, truthfully, do not have a clue about decommissioning, I promise you.
Well, the proposal is
The world
25,000.
doesn't-
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about something that's gonna happen 25 years down the road, possibly.
I think a bond's better.
But how much, boss?
I don't know. A lot.
Seriously. I mean, here we are. I don't know.
I mean, if they hadn't had one at River Sound, they wouldn't have any infrastructure.
Right, that's right. And do you do a bond that we pay for and they pay us, so that you know that it's,
Yeah, I think that might be a better idea. Because you can get a good rated bond company.
But then how you,
But how much is the
but then how
bond?
you gonna force them to pay it?
if
Once
they
once they get that,
I'd make them pay it up front. I wouldn't have an ongoing commitment. I'd have,
In other words, they have to buy the bond today for
Yeah.
$100,000.
I'd say closer to $1 million,
and pay it for how long?
Well, can't you buy the bond up in the beginning, buy the whole thing, almost like an annuity? You just you write a check now for X on the
25
bond.
years.
No.
I think you can.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
That's
think you,
an
I don't think
annuity.
you have to, yeah, I don't think you have to do it. I don't know that, but Anne Marie can look into that.
Well, a annuity and a bond is gonna be two separate items.
Yeah, well, I understand that, but I mean, I don't think you have to, I think you could pay it up in the beginning, up front. A performance bond. Isn't that how most of them are done?
I know you can, I mean, the ones I've heard about have been annual, so I
Yeah.
don't know about,
I mean, otherwise you have to put a deed of trust on the property, then you take the property back. I
Right.
mean, that's the only way you can assure that you get it.
and a bond is certainly not out of the question. I mean,
Well,
I'm
we're
okay
gonna
with
make,
a check too. I mean, if you, however you feel, I don't know enough about it. The
but I
developing
mean, I
world.
think we've got it's a little bit too vague here, and
it's
in
too
what
small.
was written. I mean, it's by the applicant and the landowner. I'm just not sure how much to put here.
this is exactly what I was talking about.
And I'm not sure where to go to make sure that we're putting the right amount.
In the draft ordinance, we suggested that the estimate be given by a North Carolina licensed engineer or a licensed contractor who is qualified and sufficiently licensed to address decommissioning. So maybe we can tighten that language up, that it would be, an engineer that the town chooses, or, a civil engineer or a general contractor that the town chooses. That you would have to evaluate and approve the person who is going to be the
Then
qualified.
Then, if that would occur at the next meeting, but there would not be a CUP decision, because we wouldn't know. I mean, I'm not gonna, there's
right,
no
you don't
way
know
that
what
we
you don't
can
know.
we can agree to a CUP unless that is all hammered down. We don't want to.
Right.
No, how do we get it
Here
done?
we go. We can always amend this, is that correct?
We'll put some ridiculous number on there.
That's what I'm thinking, and then, if they want to stick around and let us amend it later so that we can figure this out. I mean, if we've got to do something, we've got to do it. So, let them put a cash, I mean, whoever it is, that might come in, let them, well, I mean, what do you think, $1 million?
Well, it would have to depend on the size
I
of
mean, I don't
it,
know.
you know.
I think we need to try
get-
and be realistic
Yes.
and reasonable and not
Or if you
ridiculous.
aren't,
I mean,
then
this is,
it'll
this
be
is
appealed
serious.
and we'll lose.
exactly.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Well, can we reach out to somebody in the meantime and have
That's what-
somebody here
that's what I'm
at the,
thinking.
at the hearing, and then they can tell us? I mean,
Well, let us do some
During the
research
hearing,
of-
they can't do that.
Yeah, they can.
Sure they can.
We can have that before we have the public hearing. I mean, before we have the CUP. I mean, if those things cost $10 million to build, you know, for 5 meg, if it's $10 million to build, then how much is it to tear it down? 10%? $1 million?
Seems to me like we could paraphrase this whole conversation and give it to somebody at school of government. To be sure, we're not the only board in North Carolina
I agree.
who's dealing with this subject. And
trying to protect the
somebody-
environment.
Somebody with experience and knowledge beyond what we're trying to grapple for here could be a tremendous help. Y'all have already suggested that, and that'd be my recommendation.
Let's go with it, and then let's put it in front of
that's a great idea. Yep.
the CUP.
For you to officially act on?
That's correct.
I'm not sure we have enough time to advertise it. Let me just check and see.
Glenn, do you know anybody in that
You
business?
get,
Good deal.
Acres of diamonds in your own backyard.
It won't be 10 days.
we're putting ourselves in a box.
We got put in the box.
We did.
But you,
We've been put in the box. We didn't put ourselves in it. We got put in it.
you know,
Well,
you all know that you don't necessarily have to take action that night when you have a conditional use permit. There have countless examples of when you've tabled permit applications, asked questions, asked for more information, asked the applicant to come back. So you're not going to be forced to make a decision on the application that night. You could just say, we need more time to contemplate.
That's a good thing.
And then we get those experts in if we can't get them that night. Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay.
Can I just ask for clarification? Because we did reach out to the School of Government. Our model ordinance came from a report that the School of Government put together. We talked to other municipalities and counties. Everybody kept leading us back to the Catawba ordinance, that was one of, the best. It was, what, this third draft that you have is much more comprehensive than the original draft
agree.
that we
I
submitted.
agree.
But what I'm hearing is that you want us to try and get a realistic handle on what a decommissioning cost would be. And then also the 400-foot, 500-foot buffer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tree buffer,
Tree
big
buffer.
trees,
Okay.
forest trees,
Okay.
not
with
suburban.
undergrowth,
Yeah.
wild things
Okay.
growing, berries.
You block the
trees
sun,
and
man. I
flowers.
mean,
And that will
block the
be
sun, you won't be able to make any juice.
either at your February, you want it back at a committee meeting, so at your
That'd be
February
fine.
committee
Yes.
meeting.
That'll be fine.
Okay.
No sheep or goats like that.
They can certainly set it back, they can then set it back voluntarily from whatever, however much they need to set it back from the tree line in order to get the amount of sun they need. That would be very,
Another 500 feet.
yeah.
Okay.
They'll end up with 4
You
little
gotta have a
panels.
landowner willing to let you grow a forest on that farmland.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think that kind of handles that
It's really a lot of fun, Steve.
one. As I said, you don't know what you don't know, so. Next is boards and commissions, and we've got about 3 different items under this that shouldn't, take as long. We do have some vacancies, on the Historic Preservation Commission. Jessica, of course, has moved, and, Libby Pope, both have moved away, so we do have 2 openings there. You have 1 application, so I'm going to ask Anne Marie if she will. I do not think, well, we can do it before our next meeting. I don't think we need to do it before the next committee meeting because it's going to be at Swain and it's going to be a long meeting. I think this one is.
Well, can,
So we could, I'm sure we could do that at our regular February
Okay.
meeting.
on the preservation and all,
That's correct. And if you have other people that you know are interested, please ask them to apply. And if we do have some come in between now and then, Ms. Simpson, would be okay with you if we go ahead and book them for interviews also? Okay, all right.
Was that the only opening we got at this time, as far as preservation?
You have one on the tree committee, still a vacancy on the tree committee.
Term limits, as was in your packet, and this is something that we'll have to decide whether or not we want to change this. We do not have term limits on the airport commission, and we had asked, since Jim Callback had been appointed to the governor's aviation task force, that he be allowed to stay on. And so since there is not term limits on that, and he has been on since June under your direction, we have to decide if we want to let him continue on, or since there's not term limits, or, find someone else. But I serve as your...
is this an actionable thing now?
It's not now. It's,
I understand, we would take it forward.
We'll just take it forward.
Yeah.
But I want you to think about it as to how you want to handle that at your February 9th meeting. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I will tell you, serving as your liaison of that board, to give you something to think about, Jim has put an awful lot of time,
It's amazing.
a lot of effort, and a lot of money out of his own pocket
Yes,
into the
he
board, so
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that. And then number 3, we recently appointed Chad Cobb to the Recreation Advisory Board, and we were thinking that he still lived here in town. And unfortunately, he had actually moved out of our jurisdiction to actually appoint him, but I think it has been agreed that through the county and the Recreation Committee, Chad has been, another one of those that he doesn't miss meetings. He's very much involved in the Recreation Advisory Board. And I think it's okay that we leave him on that board. I don't think there's going to be any problem, but we wanted to bring it up in case somebody says, well, he doesn't even live here in town, and y'all appoint him. You'll know what's going on. But if between now and then you decide that that's not your wishes, then we will certainly hear that at the regular meeting. If that's okay with you, Ms. Simpson, we'll send that one on. Okay. And then, of course, last for our committee is the resolution to support the $2 billion Connect NC bond. I think we've heard this and heard this and heard this, and the governor's been here, and everybody's really pushed this initiative that would improve facilities at Elizabeth City State, the college at Albemarle, and there was another bond that we were hoping that was going to be out there for transportation. Didn't make it, unfortunately, through the legislators. But anyhow, that resolution will be in your packet to vote on. If it's okay with you, Ms. Simpson, to send that on.
Yes.
Also, okay. So we will send that one on too, Mayor, and we are through.
All right, thank you, sir.
Quite a committee.
Next, we will hear from our Finance Committee, chaired by Councilman Dixon, please.
We have a much more brief committee meeting this evening. The first one is a fairly simple matter. We are having a Rural Center Disaster Resiliency Leadership Workshop here, and Wendell at the Chamber of Commerce is putting together all the details. We're getting a $5,000 grant to do that, and we're going to basically turn that over to the chamber in exchange for them doing all the work. And so, do you need to add anything to that?
No, it's, we just wanted to have a formal agreement with the chamber, and then we'll do a budget amendment, and Wynn is putting together a great panel of speakers, so I think it's going to be a good session in March.
So we just send that on to the full committee, full council. The second thing is purchasing a trash truck. And are you going to do a little PowerPoint, or are you just going to?
We don't have a PowerPoint, but we're going to go through the.
Okay.
I'll review.
Well, I'll turn that over to you then.
Okay. We solicited bids. We had included in the budget a mechanism for you to do a lease purchase, where you would borrow, do a lease purchase finance with the bank, finance the acquisition over 5 or 7 years, Randy? We're looking at 5 years?
5 is what we did on the line truck.
5 years. Bud Powell and William Davidson put together the bid specifications. We received, I believe there were 7 different options.
10 different
10 options,
5 different vendors.
5 vendors submitted 10 variations of trash trucks. The staff recommended to me that the bid be awarded to a bidder who was not the lowest bidder, but the bidder who met our specifications. So we say the lowest qualified bidder. And I met with Bud and with William last week, and they pointed out to me the reasons why they spec'd the truck the way that they did, and really had to do with 2 issues. It came down to safety for the guys working on the back of the truck, and then also longevity, added life value, extending the life of the vehicle. And I don't know if William or Bud wanted to briefly summarize the safety issues that we're looking at. And the council received in their packet photographs, and we showed them the two trucks and then the one that we recommended. And
It's a beautiful truck.
it is a beautiful truck, but it was compelling to me when they talked about the safety and where the cylinders are located. And so if somebody wants to just briefly.
But basically, if you look at your pictures in the packet, you'll see where the hydraulic cylinders mounted to the outside of the trash truck in the rear. This is where the guys ride at all the time when they're riding down the highway. If that cylinder happens to bust, it's going to bust, and the guy's going to be right there. Whereas the other picture in the other trash truck that we're recommending, if you look, everything's contained inside of the back of the hopper. You have no moving parts on the outside. You have a lot of moving parts on the other truck, and that's one of the biggest things is, and so.
And then the longevity.
The longevity, this truck, we keep our trucks pretty well past the life expectancy. Most life expectancy is around 5 to 8 years without problems. We normally keep ours 20 to 25 years. So we were looking at that longevity. We have these trucks, this particular body that's what we have now. We have a lot of interchangeable parts that can go from one to the other. So that's one of the other reason why we're recommending that is for the longevity. We know what this packer will do. We have no background on the other one that we can come and bring in. Whether or not, it may last long. We don't know that because we know what we're working with now.
Good. Thank you, William.
William, let me ask you something.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything else, though, that we can do? I'm always worried on Friday mornings when I'm going down Queen Street, and you guys are, getting off the truck like they're supposed to, and, they're looking around the corner of the truck, make sure nothing's coming. And I'm sure there's other streets that we got that are much narrower. Whereas me slammed out and knock on wood, we hadn't, imitation wood, I'm sorry, we hadn't had a problem. But it really bothers me every time I see those guys jumping off that truck on the street side, and I know they gotta do it, but do they put an arm on these things by chance so that it can extend out if it's, nothing but a 2-foot arm with orange and yellow or something that warns traffic, hey, you see this truck, you know, but maybe this will be an indication that the guy's getting off, or, you know.
Almost like a school bus.
Yeah, something that.
I have
traffic.
no idea that's there. I've never seen anything like that on the truck. The only thing I have seen is when they have the one-arm bandits, they have that type of option on those. But as far as a rear-loaded truck like we operate, I've not seen or heard of anything in that particular category. I will check on it and see if there is anything available like that. And if there is, maybe we could add to what we have here and have that as an option.
Being the engineer that you are, you could put one on there, right?
We could probably come up with something.
End up on Shark Tank or something, maybe.
Yeah, hey, you never know.
And I want to make sure, you know, I could sit here and read these bid sheets all night long, and these do have the capacity though that you can just roll the card up.
Yes, sir.
You
We
don't
have
have
two.
to add your-
Well, actually, we have two on this one. We
Okay.
bid it out two, so either one of the operators can go back to the back and operate a cart dumper. So
That's
two
what
at
I
one
thought
time.
it was, but I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure.
Yes.
And I just wanted to also report that, thanks to Randy, he did confirm with USDA that we are eligible to apply for a grant of up to $50,000. So this bid is in the amount of $144,000 and 149.
699.
We would then only have to borrow
100. That'd be great.
So if the committee is okay, what we'd like to do is, you know, certainly not award the bid. We can't award the bid and then before we do all the grant paperwork and all the financing, but we'll work on the grant application and solicit proposals from the banks and then come back to you all.
Okay. Thank you, William and Bud.
Jill, question about safety. Now, on this, we're getting a light bar down on the back and strobe lights. So
Right, I saw the strobe
Yeah, I saw the strobe light.
Yeah.
Strobe lights and light bars on that seems to be a lot more than the old truck is.
Right.
So you really.
It's much more visible than what it was in the past.
And I think most people, when they see it, you know, normally they know Mondays and Fridays, you know, hey, they're stopped for a reason, but I'm often worried about those guys going across the street, you know, if there's something that's done
It's
out.
been really visible though.
Yeah, good deal.
So thank y'all for all your hard work on that. So we'll send that on to full council. Okay.
Yeah.
That would be it for the Finance Committee.
Thank you, sir. Moving now to Public Works. Councilman Stallings, please.
Thank you, sir, and we only have one item on there, and I think Ms. Knighton is getting ready to show us some.
Jennifer's here, our technology took a little nap.
And that is authorizing the provisions for malt beverages at the Boogie on Broad. We did that last year. We agreed with Jennifer last year to do that, and we did not have any problems with it at all. So I can't see that we should have any problems with it this year. She's going to show us the area that she's going to have roped off for the Boogie on the Broad. I'm giving you a presentation for you, but I think I'm right.
You're doing a great job, Councilman Stallings. Yes, well, thank y'all for allowing me to come before you. If you remember, we were here about a year ago, like Councilman Stallings said, and I think Chief Fortenberry can attest that I don't believe we had any incidents reported. The Edenton Police Department was a great help. We had a lot of volunteers. We had record numbers last year. Boogie on Broad is set for April 15th this year, and we will have the Band of Oz. And we are here asking you to consider the resolution before you, allowing DDE to serve beer and wine in the highlighted area. As you can see, it's between East Queen and Church Street in the yellow. Oh, I'm sorry, Eden Street, I apologize, in the yellow.
So you're going to be
Yeah.
going a different direction.
No, I apologize. Oh my goodness. And then the green is where, that's the Crestwell Furniture parking lot, where we have served in the past. So, and that's private property, and that was just so you could see where it used to be. We may put some food vendors there this year. We're going to talk to our restaurants and try to work something out, and if not, we're going to potentially bring in some food trucks, so.
Anybody have any questions of Jennifer?
I'm not on your board, but I
That's
do
all right.
have one quick
Go ahead.
question. If you bring in food vendors, because you're gonna have a very good band here, I don't know how you recommend this to them or ask them to do this, but generators are very loud on those food trucks.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If there's anything that you can do about that.
That's a good point. We talked about that in committee, and we'll talk to them about that. We'll try to have some electricity available.
Or require them to have nothing less than a Honda generator. I mean.
You know, I went to Fabulous Food Truck Friday in St. Petersburg, and there wasn't a bit of noise.
Right.
Other than people having, they had probably 35 food trucks, but I guess they had plug-ins.
Yeah, plug in.
The Edenton Electric Department has been
Certainly
wonderful
do
to
that.
work with in the past. So,
Any more questions or comments? Thank you, Jennifer.
thank
We
you.
appreciate what you do.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your support. Couldn't do it without town
And
council.
let's see, I'm the only one on my committee here tonight, so I will make a motion that we send it to full board. Gene's on my committee.
And we're having the same band we had last year?
No, ma'am. Last year we had the Embers, and this year we have the Band of Oz. So,
We ought to be able to pack that thing.
yeah, last year we just were overwhelmed with the number of people.
Yeah, it
So,
was enormous.
we need a lot of volunteers since this is going to be on TV. If you want to volunteer. So we're excited. It's going to be beautiful weather too.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have.
Thank you, sir. And that completes our agenda for tonight. So since we have no further business to conduct, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming.